Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Budget Advisory Committee meeting of April 20th. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kaufman to go through our budget deck this evening. We'll be stopping ever so often to get questions, so you won't have to hold them till the very end. But if you have a question, just raise your hand, wave, or do anything. We can be informal.
Sure. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking your time out on this Thursday evening to review the budget with us. So I will get started. So here's tonight's agenda. First, we'll look at the financial status, then budgetary highlights, proposed revenues and expenditures, identify the budget gap, and also have discussion throughout. Listed are the members for informational purpose, the members from the community for the advisory council. So we'll get to our first subject, the 22-23 financial status. So quick overview.
Mr. Kaufman, can we just wait a second? I want to make sure that everyone can get the deck
Sure.
in the chat. I just want to make sure because sometimes the print is super small. Okay. Thanks, Deidre. Wait, I'm sorry. Just waiting for the link to the deck. We'll be right with you.
Sure.
All good, Deidre? All right, there we go. Thank you, Deidre and Ms. Agnew. The link to the deck that Mr. Kaufman is reviewing is right in chat. All right, thanks, Mr. Kaufman. Sorry for the delay.
Sure, no worries. So as you can see, this is the overview of our current year expenditures to date versus budget. The number that might stick out at the bottom is this $9 million to 5,800 suspense account. So essentially that is our medical expenses, and we pay it out of that account and then allocate it based on salaries at the end of the year. So that's why it kind of looks a little funky. So those are included in the budgeted expenses above. The overall overage is due to ESSER funds that were not budgeted throughout the year. So there's a matching revenue that you'll see on the next slide that covers that gap. Any questions on the expenditure side? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'll move to revenues. What's that?
The suspense account, you said that was medical expenses that were paid?
Yeah, so essentially our medical and prescription expense comes in as one large bill each month, and through the entire year it gets charged to the 5,800, and at the end of the year it gets properly allocated to each, mostly to 1,100 and 1,200 because that's where the bulk of our salaries are, but also to each appropriate central office department based on total salaries of each section. So it'll be distributed throughout those budget line items.
Thank you.
Can you elaborate on 1,400?
1,400.
Irene, that you're 600% over budget?
Sure. Yes. So that 1,400 is anything after school, like after school tutoring, which we pay for with Title I dollars, and also summer programs, which we're paid with ESSER dollars. So essentially anything that happens that is instructional, that is outside of the normal school day, should get charged to the 1,400 line.
Is there any reimbursement for that?
Yes, those are all reimbursed with revenues, federal revenues.
All right.
Going forward, when we no longer have ESSER funds to cover, then that would be an expense that would need to be picked up under operating. Any other additional questions? Seeing none, so I'll move over to the revenue side. So these are our current year revenues. The 6,100 is inclusive of current property real estate tax, as well as transfer tax. So that gap is inclusive of about a $900,000 shortage on regular real estate and about 350 or so of transfer taxes, which may still come in by the end of the year. Because this is through March, and we just received a couple checks from the county that came in today.
That's good to know. Thank you.
As well as delinquents, they get paid through the end of the year as well. So we may still achieve some of that gap. And any taxes that were turned over to the county for regular real estate in end of January would also show up on that line. So that number may still be achievable as well. And online, this 8,700 line is where the ESSER money comes in. So that's where that $4 million budget gap is mostly covered above. In addition, it's covered by some state funding here that was not budgeted for as well.
Any questions on this slide? 2022-23 revenues. We will continue to update this so we can, use it to make some decisions.
Yes, so for board members, this document is BNF 1, I believe, that you're provided each month, just so you're aware as well.
Yes.
I assume there should be an uptick in delinquent taxes between now and June?
Yes, so usually that's the trend because we turn over the taxes to the county at the end of January. Everybody receives their letters usually end of February, early March. And then they, anybody that may have missed or forgotten tends to pay before June. So there's usually at least a slight uptick in that revenue that comes in.
Mr. Marmon, do you have a question?
Actually, I do. I was holding it.
No,
kinda
go
sort of-
for it. Go for
No,
it.
go ahead.
Well, it was kind of personal. I'm trying to figure out, has there been any type of money allocated to do something about increasing security on school buses that my children ride?
At this time, we haven't, that has not come up in any of our meetings, our board meetings with regard to security on school buses. But this is something that we can just, take this comment and bring it to a board meeting and discuss it. So I would say, as board of directors, we can discuss this at a board meeting, or I can bring it up during that time. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. My children ride the bus. They tell me people are smoking weed on the bus, they're vaping, and when they aren't doing that, they just flicking and playing with their lighters, and nobody's doing anything about it. They don't even want to get on the bus.
Okay, thank you for letting us know, Mr. Marmon, and we will get back to you if you could come to a board meeting, which is on Mondays, and we'll make sure, next Monday, next Monday, our business meeting, and you can make that comment there, but also I'm taking note of it at this time as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Marmon, do you have a bus number?
Hold on.
If you could
Right.
If you can just put that in the chat, it would be great, or the Q&A, that would be great. Thank you, Ms. Boykins, very much.
Okay, so are there any other questions related to current year revenue?
784, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll continue on to the budgetary highlight. So for anybody who's new to the budgetary process, essentially we take total revenues, total expenditures, and based on that difference, we come up with a budget gap. That budget gap will be provided at the end once we review revenues and expenditures. So the proposed 23-24 revenues are as follows. The general composition of revenues are our local revenues, which are made up of our local taxes generally, and some miscellaneous revenues, state revenues, and federal revenues. So here's a 2-year trend of our actual revenues, what we project that our final revenues for this year will be, and then our proposed 23-24 revenues. And then the next slide consists of our budget from last year for revenues compared to our budget for this year in revenues. So we have a slight decrease budgeted for our current real estate taxes. Essentially, we did an analysis on the 3-year trend of collection percentages and noted that it was about we've historically budgeted. So we reduced that collection rate projection for the next year down to that 3-year average, which is why you see a reduction. So it's based on the same millage rate, but a lower collection rate. And as everybody knows, interest rates are currently sky high compared to recent history. So we're projecting a little bit more in interest revenue as well. For a total projected local revenues of 51.2 million. Are there any questions related to those items? Okay. So our proposed state revenues, or our 2-year trend, our estimated final for this year, and also our proposed next year are as follows. And you can see the total projection goes up by about 6.1 million. We can get into, there's a little bit more detail on the next slide. So I'll go to that. So for those of you who were involved in the process last year, you can remember that we did not receive the state budget until after we had to pass the school budget. So there was about a $4 million difference in what the state allocated to us in BEF versus what we had projected, because we weren't certain that we were going to get that additional $4 million. So that $7.4 million difference is inclusive of that 4 million. And then this year, as of March 2023, they said that we're going to get $3.3 million additional for next year. So the total difference between those two numbers is that 7.4 million. The level up in the March budget was pushed into the BEF funding formula. So that's why you see an $800,000 decrease. The 1305 was decreased to be more in line with the 3-year average that we've been recognizing. Special education is also based on that March state budget that was put out. So again, those two numbers are subject to change. And we also had a similar situation with the basic education funding where we had to pass the budget before we knew the actual number. So there's also a slight increase between what we budgeted for in 2023 and what we actually received. PlanCon, some of our debt has been paid off, which is a good thing, but that also means we don't get the reimbursement for paying off that to make those debt payments. Ready to Learn, we for some reason had not budgeted for it last year, so it was identified in the state budget in March, so I have included that in our budget for this year. And then general increases for Social Security and retirement. The state reimburses us for 50% of those costs. So with the projected increases in those expenses, we also project a little bit of an increase for revenues in relation. So the overall increase we project to be about $9 million from state revenues. Now that's a lot to unpack. So does anybody have any questions related to those items?
Budget
No
advisory committee people also.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mary. Is your hand raised? Oh, okay, sorry. I think Jennifer, you and Ms. Boykins were trying to speak at the same time. I'm not sure.
Okay, Ms. Boykins, do you have something to add?
No, I actually was just stating that it was quiet and I was just stating I didn't have any question.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just trying to digest what he just said, that's all.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest.
Yes. So there's a lot of information to digest. So like I said, and as Jennifer had said at the beginning, please interject whenever you have a question because we're going to go through a lot tonight. So proposed federal revenues, again, the 2-year trends estimated for the end of this year, and then are proposed for next year, and those are based on the current year allocations. And we will get those final numbers in May of 2023 from the state when they release the grant applications to us.
Mr. Kaufman, can you go back 2 slides for 1 second? Yeah, right here. I just had that's what I had a question about. So with regard to PlanCon, right?
Yes.
So when I seen that, I'm just, from my understanding, PlanCon is not funded yet. Is this something that we're presuming is going to be funded? And
so PlanCon is still paying any legacy approved projects. So these payments are coming through on debt from projects that occurred. Oh geez, I don't even know how long ago anymore. 10 or so years ago, I would say. Maybe a little sooner than that, but probably around 10. So that's why some of them have been from even longer, which is why that number is going down, because we're paying off the debt related to those projects. So as those items are paid off, our revenue's slowly going down because they're not reimbursing us. Usually it's around 20% or so of the debt payments that we make. So as we pay them off, our revenue goes down.
Oh, okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Any other questions related to that PlanCon? Okay. So this is the overall difference of the federal revenues. So these numbers are pretty much provided to us by the state, and they require a matching expense. So even though that increase is 344, if we don't spend 344, we don't actually get that money. So this doesn't really factor into the budget gap.
My question for this slide was, I wasn't sure of the acronym IDEA. Could you tell me what that is, and also what access just one is as well?
Sure. So IDEA is related to special education. It's and I may misspeak on this, so excuse me if I do. And it just reimburses any like extra, I want to say, tuition costs that we incur. Usually we contract with the IU to provide additional service to our special education students, and they refund a portion of that money.
Oh, that's good. We get a kickback from that. Wish that was with charter schools, but go on.
So access is the medical program that we get reimbursements for. And so medical assistance and access are related to each other. Medical assistance is the administrative portion, I believe. I mix those two up, and then access is the actual medical expense portion.
Okay.
And IDEA is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That's what IDEA stands for.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to misspeak on that in case I was wrong about the acronym, but thank you for that, Dr. Bukitz. Any additional questions about federal revenues? So overall, big picture of revenues, add up the local, state, and federal revenues, and we get a total projected budget of essentially 116 million for total revenues for all items that were discussed previously. So moving forward to our proposed expenditures for 2023. So these are the contracted expenses that we have been highlighting over the past couple of presentations that aren't reflected in department budgets and aren't reflected in building budgets. So a new item that I would like to point out is salaries for step corrections for WPESA members, which is going to approximate $127,000. So that is a new item that has been added since last year. And this is a project that I believe Dr. Bekutz has been working on to make sure teachers are getting paid for their actual step that they should be on. And you can correct me if I misspoke on that, Dr. Bekutz.
What was the step correction number?
827,000.
Okay, I thought you said 127.
No.
No, you're right. Mr. Kaufman, and I want to thank the union for working with me and getting us that information. It has been a partnership with us working together. And I can go into more detail as we meet with board members over the course of the next month as to the why behind it. But I just feel as though it's something that we need to address sooner rather than later. And I do believe that we experience exits from our district because of pay, especially in the teacher arena.
So, Dr. Bekutz, maybe at a personnel meeting, we can explain a little more about what that's about and how we figure that out. Is that to correct what years when we were unable to give step?
You're exactly correct, Ms. Hoff. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any questions from anyone?
Independent of these increases, can you remind me when contracts are expiring?
Sure.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I was gonna say, so the SSO contract expires June of this year, as well as Act 93. I believe we're instituting one-year extensions on those.
Those are meet and discuss groups, correct?
That is correct. It's not,
Thank you.
those groups do not have a collective bargaining agreement.
Correct. They're meet and discuss.
Yep.
And then I'll need some assistance with the WPEA and WPESA dates.
WPEA is 2024.
Mhm.
WPESPA, always get tongue tied when I get to the second one, I believe is up the year after that.
Okay.
25, if I'm
I
not mistaken.
tend to mix them up in my mind, so I didn't want to miss.
Thank you.
So in the next iteration of this document, can we talk about the cost of the Act 93 and SSO meet and discuss contract?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yes, we definitely can. Okay, are there any other questions related to this slide? Seeing none.
Oh, on the charter schools, that figured at 2 million increase to adjust to actual cost?
Yes. So it looks like we were slightly under budget this year, and the last 3 years we've had an approximate increase that ranges between 1.5 to 2 million. We're addressing that cost by with our PLC program, but we just haven't been able to completely stop the increase.
Anyone else? Thanks, Mr. Kaufman. Proceed ahead.
Sure. Thank you. So now we would like to discuss our school budgets. So the two charts that you see here, the top chart is enrollment, so actual student count projections. The bottom table is allocations of dollars to the schools based on those enrollment numbers. So essentially for each member that was enrolled at the school building, you were allocated $140 per student. And then you were allocated an additional $15 for any student that was in special programs or were enrolled in ELL services. Sorry, an additional $30 for ELLs. No, 15. And then if you were enrolled in both programs, you received an additional $30 total. So it wasn't one or the other. You could be both in both programs and receive the 15 for each. So that total was $659 in the current year. So the position allocation in the current year is as follows. Overall position change 36 at a cost at $3.7 million. LinkedIn is our school budget methodology. So you can see how the determinations and allocations for each building were done at elementary and secondary levels. And just to highlight the academic interventionists, there were one in each school building in the current year, and they were funded with ESSER $3. So what we'd like to do for 23-24, because we saw such an impact and through the data that was presented to us, that we think it would be very beneficial for our students to have 2 elementary interventionists to receive the additional support that they truly need to get to where they need to be. Any questions on this slide?
I would just like to add something. The academic interventionist that was in place this year, most of their focus area, or most of those individuals were ELA certified. And so as we began to do the work, it was indicated from various academic interventionists in schools. Some of you may recall 2 of them we videotaped, and they were a part of the legislative breakfast Zoom presentation that was presented. They spoke to the benefit of having those individuals in the building. And so there was agreement, I believe, across all schools, and this is primarily elementary, that having an academic interventionist for mathematics would definitely be important. I strongly agree with that, just given our proficiency rates in math. And so that's why you see the 16, and I just wanted to explain, it's not just 2 to have 2, it's 1 that would focus on ELA and 1 person that would focus on mathematics.
So, Dr. Bigos, is there a position change, or it doesn't, we're not adding, we're just redefining?
No,
So-
you would be adding from a financial standpoint, because unless we pay for the ones that we have currently that are in schools for ELA, we would not have 8 academic interventionists. So this budget is saying we need 8, plus we want an additional 8 to focus on math.
Right, but we had 2 of each this year, correct?
No, we did not. We only had 1.
Oh, got it. Got
Yes.
it. So you're adding 8, not 16.
Correct. But technically, no, because technically the 8 are going to go away unless we fund it for next year. The
Okay,
8
got it.
Because
Yeah.
the 8 we're funding now are through ESSER dollars.
Got it. Got it.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Got it.
Do I need to explain that again? Just for for anybody else? I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're saying. Is everyone clear?
I do understand what you're saying, but the question I had, well, would it be, so to keep those 8, it will be 120 million in order to keep those 8, right?
No, to keep 8, it would be half of that amount.
Half of that amount, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Can we, just in the new positions, in the next iteration of this document, just say which school they're going to? Or about like elementary versus middle or high, just so we show where our investment's going.
Yep, we sure will.
Thank you, Dr. B.
And Dr. Because the reason why I was asking that was when we said that we are utilizing ESSER funds, clearly ESSER funds is going to run out. So in order to keep the number that we have, that's why I was asking if we would need to come up with 2 million or half of that 2 million.
Okay, yep, and it is half to keep the
Okay.
8.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Kaufman.
All right. So that was the end of our school budgets. Now we're going to go into our department budgets. Here is an overall summary of the department budgets. 2023-24 proposed versus the 2022-2023 budget that was approved. And just for privacy reasons, when there was an increase, if a new position is being requested, we are not providing the salaries of the whole department so that nobody can figure out anybody's salaries. So when you see total personnel 0, it doesn't mean we're not paying any personnel. It's just that we don't want to give away any private information of current employees. So now we'll get into the actual individual department budgets. For student services registrations, overall, the increase is 60,000. There's one personnel repurposed position that's 21,000, and then there's 22,000 of contracted temps that was included in the HR budget that should truly be charged to the student services registration because that's where they were doing the work. So that's the bulk of the increase there. For the SSO budget,
Excuse me, Mr. Kaufman, that personnel registration coordinator, it says repurposed. Is that like adding to someone's role? Because 21,000 doesn't seem enough to.
Correct. So, correct. So what we would be doing is actually repurposing a position that's there. So we would, for all intents and purposes, eliminate a position that's there and then create a new position. So you're still going to have one position, but the cost of the new position is about $21,000 more.
Thank you.
Um,
yeah,
Yep, we
With-
feel very strongly that in that department, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate supports in place to ensure that we are able to move forward with registration related to eSchool as well as to PIMS.
Great. Again, in the next iteration of this document, can we make the new positions hot and link to their job descriptions so people can see that investment?
Yep, we will.
Thank you so much. Any questions from anyone? All right. Next up.
SSOs under student services, increase of 94,000. The majority of it is related to the school resource officer in Lansdowne at 76,600. That would basically be a partnership with the Lansdowne Police Department to have a school resource officer in the building, and the district would provide 80% of the cost related to that.
And I
Can
just
we-
want to remind,
Go on,
I'm
Dr.
sorry. I just wanted to remind some board members, and for those of you who may not know, we've had several conversations prior to this budget being developed around how do we partner to ensure that we have some safety, I'll say preventative safety measures in place in our buildings. And so this is not, in our estimation, a police officer. It is a resource officer. So in my mind, this is someone who's going to help create relationships with students, help to develop partnerships and other things with members of our community, as well as support students on a daily basis. So this would be somebody who is fully dedicated to our high school and to our high school students. So that was some of the background behind this. I think what we will see long-term would be hopefully reductions in what we would call suspensions or reductions in the need to necessarily reach out to the police department for support when incidents occur. So those are some things that these dollars and that this resource will assist us with.
Great. Dr. B. Coates, this school resource officer agreement is for 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is what the borough provided us with, and we will, if we have not already, I just don't recall and I apologize, we will make sure that the board receives what we receive from the Lansdowne Borough as far
That would
as.
be awesome, Dr. B. Coates. We have not received that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'll make sure you all get it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I also would like to say, Dr. B. Coates, thank you for allowing this to take place with regard to Lansdowne. I want to just say that this does everything you stated about having a school resource officer and the parameters around it with regard to building relationships. And we need that at this time. And also it'll help our, our kids feel a little more comfortable as well. So I just appreciate, and our parents too, with regard to safety. But I appreciate it because we have somebody else that is trained on another level than our school officers. So I just think it's a good thing. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, so are there any other questions related to this slide? Okay. So the next slide is for the Student Services Office, net increase of 820,000. So there's a personnel request for 114,600, which is inclusive of salary and benefits. The Lakeside counselors next year, ESSER 3 is not available to pay them, so that their cost is 245,000. So if we want to maintain them, and they're at the secondary level, providing support in those areas. Safe Corridors is a contracted expense for 386,000. And then the next item is just truly a budget transfer, but it causes this budget's increase to occur. So you'll see a related decrease, in 65,000 in the special education people services department.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Again, if we could show the JD of that personnel. The Safe Corridors, can we also link to that project?
Yes, we can, without a doubt. And also with Safe Corridors is, I know some of us participate with some elected officials meetings around Safe Corridors. So this is a unit or entity that would again assist us with ensuring that students have a safe environment, are safe. We're having further conversations with this entity in terms of how do we support students as they transition from school to home, as well as within the building. So just want to thank Danielle and her team for getting some of the legwork done with trying to move forward with this effort. And from my perspective, I think a lot of what we're seeing coming from student services for 23-24 is around safety, providing support for mental health. I think all of these are things that we've talked about, and we know that our students need them. And so I just want to preface or put a frame around why the increase.
Sure. Are there any other additional questions related to this slide? Okay, business office, we are projecting a total decrease of $5,000. Last year, we requested an increase to replace the chairs in the boardroom for anybody that wanted to attend from the public. So we are reducing our budget back to its original state. Maintenance and operations, we've previously identified the contracted increase for Airmark, which is about 162,000. Summer projects, now that we have major projects going on, the capital fund is being used for those projects. So we're budgeting for any repairs that may need to happen over the summer. Some examples of the upcoming year repairs are the middle school gym floor, the roof for the middle school gym, and concrete repair throughout the district. So items like that, we need, I want to call it a budget in order to make repairs as they come when we are unable to make total renovations. Maintenance, our energy contract was up this year. It's a 3-year contract usually. So our energy went up by 22% for the next 3 years. Initially back in fall when they did the first RFP, it was supposed to go up by 60%. So we actually did get a better deal going out in the spring. However, it's still a significant number. So our total increase for maintenance and operations is 934,000. Are there any questions for those items? Transportation, our first student contract projected increase is about 66,000, and a couple other items like fuel and other contracted services to transport students, about 11,000, for a total increase of 78,000. Human resources, net decrease of 22,000, and that's related to that budget transfer into student services. Information technology, personnel change, repurpose contractors to full-time employees. We'll see a savings of about $90,000. E-rate equipment is 62,000. So essentially that's the net number with the 80% savings. So we need to make sure we budget for that 20% that the district is responsible for. It's 15% plus the admin fee. So it comes to 62, which is about 20%. Accounting software projected to increase about $5,000 for next year. The Chromebook cleaning, which was paid with ESSER previously, but 100,000, and Chromebook repair contract 95,000. And as part of the IT audit, they identified the phone system, which will cost about 72,000. So a net increase in the IT department of about 244,000. And most of those E-rate items relate back to the 10-year plan that was previously shared with the board. And we can link that in as well for the next presentation.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, any questions related to those items? The personalized learning community, requesting a PLC counselor to solely focus on students in the personalized learning community to support kids and provide the necessary items, needs, and make sure they're on track for graduation, things like that, that they will have more individualized attention since they're not in the buildings any longer. It's a little bit harder to, I shouldn't say harder. We want to make sure they have equal access as a student in the building that can walk into a counselor's office. So it'll give equal access to counselors, and Mary could provide more information on that if there are any questions. I may not have described it as well as it should have been.
Any questions from anyone? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Onward.
Community relations, no budget increases. Academic services, research and evaluation, no budget increases. Academic services, special education, $50,000 increase for instructional materials. Just costs for the instructional materials have gone up. So they're trying to adjust to actual costs now. And that $65,000 budget transfer to student services. So a net decrease of 15,000 for the special education. Academic services, professional development, no budget increases. Academic service assistant superintendent, personnel change with an increase of $81,000. And superintendent, no budget increases. So I kind of went through a couple slides there. Are there any questions related to what was presented? Okay. So overall, the total expenditures are made up of instructional support services, non-instructional, and debt service. And those individual totals equates to about 119.6 million. And this is where we can discuss the budget gap. So from slide 17, our total revenues were projected to be 15.9 million. Our total expenditures budget expected to be 19.6 million. And that presents a budget gap of 3.7 million. 792,000 of that is related to the facilities master's plan. So I don't know. So when Jamie Doyle came to present for our next year's debt that would need to be issued to continue the facilities master plan requires us to come up with an additional approximate $800,000. So the difference between that budget gap and that required increase for the facilities master plan is about $2.9 million. Are there any questions related to this slide?
So the gap based on BEF, SEF, and level up, these numbers can change deciding on how the state passes their budget in June, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just for everyone, Mr. Kaufman, we can't go up to 3.7 million, correct?
Correct.
How far can we go?
I believe it's just about 3 million.
Okay, and that's because Act 71 is at 6.1% for us.
Correct.
And we did not seek exceptions, so we'll need to get this number, this budget gap number, whether it's the state adding more or us adding less, down to about 3 million.
Yeah, so there's different options and they're still developing. So if the state number goes up, if our taxes come in that we had initially projected, would give us some fund balance that we could use. Again, how much tax increase we consider. And then the alternative, if none of the revenues increase, we would have to look into the expenditures.
Got it. Any questions?
Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the next slide. Future meetings. The next meeting will be in May for the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, May 18th. And then on May 22nd, the board will have to approve the preliminary final budget. The budget can still be subject to change, but by state law, we must approve a preliminary final budget on that date because we have to do it 30 days before year end minimum. And the third item would be the adoption of the final budget on our June 26th business meeting. And just a reminder, all meetings start at 6:30 p.m.
Any questions? All right. I know it's a lot. We're all, if you have any questions, please feel free to get it to Mr. Kaufman or myself. And we'll get them answered, and any questions asked will go to the entire group. So we really appreciate your participation tonight. We know it was 41 pages. And if there's no questions, have a good evening.
Ms. Hoff, I don't have any questions. I just want to add something to what you shared. We will probably develop a Q&A and just have a way of tracking all questions versus sending ad hoc emails or in weekly updates. We'll do a budget Q&A, and that could also be something that we could put on the website as well, so that everyone can track along with us. And board members, if you have not already, we do need you to respond to the requests related to participating in one of the smaller budget sessions. It would be very helpful for us so that we can plan appropriately, please.
Yeah, Dr. B. Coates, I got that email this afternoon, and I wondered if you would be willing for me to work with the board to see if we could break up and get into 3 sessions. So there's always another board member in the session. So like more ears are hearing the same information at the same time. I think that would make it easier on staff also. Would that be okay?
I thought there were 3 sessions that we sent out. There are 3 sessions.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought I was just gonna work with folks to get on the same sessions. Let me just look at it again. I thought there were a few more than 3.
No, it was just 3.
Okay. All right, great.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Good night, everyone.